Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Cannabis Live. I'm Jennifer Domain.
I'm Nicholas Galindez.
And we're attorneys with the Cannabis Legal Group. We're talking to you today about social media concerns in the cannabis space. So how do we talk about cannabis on social media? What concerns should you have and how do you avoid running into those pitfalls? But before we dive into all of that, let's talk about the news.
So for this week, we're going to kind of stick strictly within Michigan, although there is a lot going on nationwide and across the world. First bit of news is that Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel established a cannabis work group to meet, to discuss and shape and help form the adult use and medical laws in Michigan. Just wanted to congratulate everybody who got selected for that work group, including our owner of Cannabis Legal Group and managing partner, Barton Morris. So congratulations, Barton, for getting selected to help shape Michigan's laws. Mm-hmm. To go along with that, the Attorney General also, seems like a busy week for her, but also joined a coalition of other Attorney Generals across the states and some territories that are kind of trying to put pressure on the federal government in terms of getting them to pass the Safe Banking Act, which would allow cannabis businesses in legal states to work with the federal banking system, opening up accounts, getting loans, line of credits, and generally protecting those institutions that are working with these cannabis businesses from federal prosecution. So I think it's more than half now that have signed up, kind of signed on board, pledging their support and urging Congress to act and actually pass this into law. More to be seen in the future. I think we have a lot of movement at the federal level, so I think that's a good step forward, and I applaud the Attorney General of Michigan for adding our support as well as the state. And then last but not least, we did get news that the first marijuana regulatory agency approval of a delivery service has been given. There were 3 overall that had been applied, and just as a refresher, only deliveries out of licensed provisioning center storefronts can actually do delivery. So you need to get licensed as a provisioning center, and then either during that license application process or afterwards submit an additional plan for delivery that complies with all the rules. So this one that actually has been doing deliveries that just started is in Detroit. There's another one in Detroit and another one in Portage that was reported as having been approved. So I think those are going to start rolling out in the very near future. Always important if you're wanting to engage with the licensed market that you are getting your product from an actually licensed delivery service. So there have been a lot out there that we've had people call in about, but it has been confirmed that these are the only 3 right now that are actually up and licensed and running. So other than that, that's it for the news. I think we can move into the social media portion of it.
Yes. So generally, social media is pervasive, right? Every business that you know is going to have a social media page or pages, Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, some Snapchats, some LinkedIns. You're going to have these accounts everywhere. And the interesting part about cannabis is because it's still a Schedule I substance under federal law, we have this issue where the federal government is looking at it, the state regulators are looking at it, employers are looking at it, and even the social media platforms are looking at it and trying to determine whether or not you are advertising an illegal substance. So there's a lot of factors at play in how you post your content and what you're saying about it, because you might run into issues with the FDA, etc. So we actually took some time to talk to our social media marketing specialist, and she had a couple of really good general tips to follow first, and then we'll talk about some specific examples later. So Nick, you want to talk about some of the tips that she had?
Sure, and just to add on before we jump into that, I think it's been ever growing as far as how pervasive social media and this type of conduct is starting to really infiltrate our lives. You kind of touched on it with employers. They're screening people's social media accounts, kind of checking for character and if you look like a good candidate to be hired. In terms of the government, we've seen the licensing board recently. We know that Michigan State Police and the licensing board, when they were looking at applications, they were looking at social media posts, websites. They would have links to Facebook. They'd have links to certain articles that somebody you were connected with or your business name was connected with gave an interview in 2015. So this stuff still exists. And the regulators will certainly look for it, not only, maybe not continuously, but if something comes up, there's ways for them to see what was posted, what was shared, the type of language and the way it was worded to make sure it's compliant. If there's any issues with the FDA or any kind of incidents that come up, these things are things that you should care about, just like protecting your business and a lot of the other things we're talking about. So tip number one from Sydney, our social media and marketing specialist, was, keep your social media pages for your business professional. There's a little bit of a debate on our end as far as, it's not a black and white rule. I think that there's different audiences that you can target with your social media. And so it's not always, keep it strictly professional, keep it strictly for fun. Because especially with cannabis, those worlds are kind of, on a collision course and have been for a while, where you have, consumers, you have third-party ancillary businesses, you have investors, you have institutional investors, you have research universities, so on and so forth. And all of them have a different kind of criteria as far as what they're going to be looking for, what's attractive to them on social media, what types of things they are turned off on or turned off by. If you post certain things that might make them not invest in your company, might make consumers not purchase your product. So I think there's a lot of, it's definitely not black and white as far as, keeping it professional, but it is important to kind of cater towards that and definitely, don't let it go too far off of that kind of, those marching orders.
Right. Consider it more like business casual. That's what I would like to think about it, is keep it business casual. You definitely want it to be a professional feeling, but you can still have fun. There's no reason why you can't show, a couple of products or have fun on your page. It is still your brand. So if your brand is more, geared towards millennials or people in their 30s rather than the business types, then maybe you're going to have a little bit more fun, but still make sure that you're staying compliant, and overall the entire vibe of your page needs to be professional. Another item that Sydney, our social media expert, had made sure to mention was using relevant hashtags. So hashtags are I think a double-edged sword, because sometimes that leads to a little bit more censorship or restrictions from the different platforms when they see those, but you're also going to generate a lot more views when you use the right ones. So think about what's really popular in the industry and use those a lot. Hashtag cannabusiness, hashtag CBD, hashtag hemp, hashtag cannabis culture. Any of those are going to generate more leads, more clicks, more likes, more follows. So, and generally, they aren't going to get you an automatic account elimination or deactivation. Your content might be flagged, your content might be taken off, and you can appeal it, but you definitely want to make sure that you're using your hashtags wisely. So don't be using hashtags for children and hashtags for CBD or hemp in the same post, because that's not going to work.
And also too, it's important to be aware as far as that goes, paid social media advertising. If you have a Facebook page, if you have an Instagram page, sometimes they will restrict your content. And let's say you're gearing up for a big sale at your local retail store, and that gets tied up because you didn't have the right person overseeing that and making sure that it didn't get blocked and it didn't get fixed when it was initially blocked. That could cause you to lose sales that week, and maybe you needed to do show some good numbers for the second quarter, and because all that happened, you didn't meet your sales goals, and so the investments in that next round of capital raising doesn't happen because of some social media flub, some ad that didn't get posted or something that got taken down for a while. Maybe people couldn't find your store because your Facebook page got, temporarily blocked. So I think it's important to realize, how your account operates within the social media system and what kind of roadblocks and road bumps that there are right now with cannabis businesses. And anytime marijuana or cannabis kind of buzzwords are used, some institutions are still kind of putting up these hurdles that you kind of have to overcome, at least in this landscape.
So that really leads us right into our third point from Sydney, and that is already just draft an appeals paragraph or an email, a template that you can use when your content is restricted. So, if there's something that gets flagged, it's taken down, you can always appeal that to that social media platform. But, you might not have time to rewrite an entire email every time this happens. It might happen fairly regularly to you. So just save it on your computer or on your phone notes app or something that says, who your business is, what sort of industry you're in, whether this, make sure that you say that your state is a legal state for adult use or medical or what you're doing. And that way it's super easy for you just to copy and paste it into an email, shoot that off to Facebook or Instagram, and you can avoid a major headache that way. But it's kind of getting ahead of the problem because you are going to have issues in this space with social media, but it's so much better to be proactive about it. I mean, our law firm as Cannabis Legal Group, we still have issues with social media, and we don't have anything really to do with the plants other than advise them on the legalities of it. So, if it happens to us and we're not even posting, a ton of pictures about plants or anything like that, it's going to happen to people who are closer to the plant itself. I think that is generally just something that should be anticipated, and you need to plan ahead for that.
So speaking of those who are actually touching the plants, I think we can now kind of get to the specifics of, what types of marketing and advertising things that can come up for different facilities, for caregivers and patients, and then just for general, adults, minors. So we can kind of touch on all those little bits and pieces now. So kind of to start off, licensed facilities under the MMFLA, there's one rule in particular that kind of touches on marketing and advertising, and that's Rule 76. Just generally big picture, it says you have to follow all ordinances, state laws, and regulations. So it doesn't really say much about what you can and can't do other than just know all the laws and rules and don't mess up. But they do get more specific, and I think the first big one is you can't engage in advertising that is deceptive, false, or misleading. So if we want to kind of maybe workshop that as to what might be deceptive, misleading, or false, and what could potentially get licensed facilities in trouble?
Sure. So issues with advertising that would be considered false or misleading would be that you're, first of all, a licensed business when you're not actually a licensed business, or maybe you don't have a full approval and you're saying that you do have a full approval from the state. That is a big problem, and the department is going to have a problem with it. The enforcement division is probably going to come knocking on your door, so make sure that you're using the right phrasing when you're putting a post up or you're creating your account. Another thing that could be considered an issue is if you have any assertions or statements about your products that are considered an issue. So for instance, saying that your cannabis helps cure ADHD, but that's not considered a condition approved by the MMMA. That's a problem because now you are indicating that your product will help with in a condition that is not approved by the state under the law.
And also that goes for anything on a product, a sign, or a document. So let's say you're at your storefront and you're handing out flyers that might say something misleading. We test, our tests pass and theirs don't most of the time, and really everyone's fails within that margin. You really want to fact check and make sure you're not doing the misleading and the deceptive type claims, just across the board, including those, leaflets and pamphlets that you might pass out at your actual store. So we're not just talking about a huge billboard here. We're definitely talking about, Instagram posts, Instagram comments, Facebook comments, anything that you might put out as a business. You want to be careful to not be deceptive, misleading, or, it should not contain anything false within it. Another thing, as far as restrictions in Rule 76 is that, you can't advertise marijuana products if the ad is visible to the public. And this is one that we want maybe some more guidance from the regulators on, because as you know, the internet is pervasive. So we've seen advertisements, we've seen not necessarily products, but definitely the licensed facilities or non-licensed ones giving ads and sending stuff out into the internet. What this means, I think, and I've seen billboards for provisioning centers coming up across Michigan. I haven't seen any actual product on the billboards though, but I think what this is getting at is that they don't want a bunch of marijuana buds on a billboard saying, hey, $35 an eighth.
Right.
They think, if you have an innocent ad saying, hey, here's our location for medical patients only, I think that would pass muster, but it's still to be seen. And, hopefully as the department continues to flesh out their rules, this will be something that they kind of expand on, just for further guidance, so that people, everyone wants to comply with the rules that's entering in this market. And so the more clear these rules are fleshed out, the better people can follow them.
Right. Another area that really needs to be fleshed out is there's a portion of the rule that says you can't advertise marijuana product to members of the public unless you have some sort of reliable evidence that no more than 30% of your audience is reasonably expected to be under the age of 17. So that's going to be really hard to do on social media, because you really can't control who is liking your page or following your page. And so, other than like seeing a little picture of whatever they put as their profile picture, that's the word I'm looking for. If they appear to be 10 years old, then, block them. But if they don't have a picture of themselves, you really don't know. And it might not be prudent for you to spend a ton of time going through all of your followers to see if they're above the age of 18. So, or if at least 70% of them are. So it might be wiser to consider putting like a little disclaimer in your bio or something saying, must be over the age of 18, or for 18 and older Michigan medical marijuana patient, or something like that. Put something in there that shows that you are indicating this page to be for adults. And if you're only licensed for a medical facility, then they have to be geared towards patients. You have to make sure that you say certain things in order to protect yourself.
And then I think, just to tie up Rule 76 for medical marijuana licensing act facilities that are actually licensed, there has to be a warning that says it's only for use for registered patients, keep out of reach of children, can't drive a motor vehicle under the influence, and then has a number for the National Poison Control Center. So again, if there's a product on there, and then we're getting a little bit into uncharted territory here, but not to say this has to be on every single ad for every single type of product that you might be giving out on a pamphlet, but the more this stuff is contained in the types of documents and things you're posting online, the safer you'll be in the event something happens. The regulators are noticing issues with a lot of other things and they decide to throw the book at you. They can certainly get a lot of things from social media if it's out there to also kind of tip the scales in their favor over yours. But for licensed facilities too, there's a lot of other considerations that have to go to safety, security, confidentiality. If you're giving a virtual tour of your licensed facility, make sure that no documents are on the pegboard that say the password or the key code to state the obvious. If you have all the saves locked in your security room, make sure that nobody. If I'm looking at it up here and I'm taking a selfie and somebody can look at what the key code is that I punched into my safe, Things like that you want to be aware and cautious when you're posting videos or pictures or anything like that. And then also, as Jennifer kind of alluded to, there's certain kind of claims as it pertains to food or dietary supplements that haven't been approved yet by the FDA. Selling CBD and things like that right now, if you're marketing that but don't have a processor handler license, the FDA and the USDA still haven't really fleshed those things out. So all of these things, not saying they're going to be strictly regulated and monitored, but it's just kind of a safety net to make sure your business is following these rules on social media, so that, knowing that they're all out there, you can't just make them disappear. Making sure you have all your ducks in a row so that you're not violating all of these left and right. And then maybe that, the MRA notices that there's a bunch of stuff going wrong at your actual facility, and they just kind of tack on all of these other regulatory violations, which are up to $10K per day per violation, could sink your business, could cause it to fail.
Right. So why risk having something so small like an Instagram post cause an issue, right? Just be smart about what you're posting, keep it professional, pay attention to what you're posting. I would suggest don't give your access to your Instagram account or your Facebook account to all of your employees. Pick one or two that know the rules, know the regulations, know what can and can't be said, and let them have access, but don't just allow everyone to have access, because then you're going to run into problems. And if somebody else is posting something to your page, like a testimonial, this product is awesome, I got a great deal, like cured this or something, delete it and then send them a message saying you really appreciate their business, but you had to delete it to maintain regulatory compliance. You can keep good customer relations and still protect your business on social media. So it's a balancing act, but you want to make sure you're doing it well.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, with all of these different businesses coming on board, it's also important to protect your company against any claims against libel and slander, where maybe in a comment reply on Instagram, you say, yeah, that other licensed company grows their stuff with nuclear waste. And maybe they could see that and, for better or for worse, file a lawsuit for disparaging their name and making false claims against their company, tortious interference with business operations, and a lot of other things that, whether or not they have merit, could cause you a headache if you're having to defend a lawsuit through a certain stage. Certainly can get costly too. So you always want to be safe, better safe than sorry. Check all of the things that you are saying or having people say on your behalf so that you don't run into any of these issues.
Right. So that is licensed businesses in a nutshell. However, there's some separate concerns if you're a caregiver or a patient. Some of the most common ones are if you're showing non-compliance with the MMMA. So if you are showing that this is my patient room. I have, these are my plants. I'm a MMMA patient, and I can count the pots of plants you have, and there's 20, and you can only have 12. You've got a problem. Unless you're a caregiver, you've got a problem. Or if you're a caregiver and you're doing a Facebook Live video, or you're doing something where I can see all your plants and your two friends helping you trim the plants in the room, and you can't have any other individuals in that room, now we've got a problem. So be smart. Make sure you're maintaining compliance with the MMMA, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's always been the case. And before the MRTMA was passed in November, this was a lot more serious, where you'd have caregivers posting things, and that could cause them to face potential felony or misdemeanor charges. It's still important that you stay compliant. I think that a lot of caregivers were learning how to cultivate and really grow good product. And they're looking to enter in as master growers or be, equity holders of some of these cannabis businesses. And if they were, posting inappropriate things based on the investors or the owners of the company, that could kind of come back to haunt you. And you don't get that big opportunity with a big grow facility that has stacked licenses. And you wish that you really had presented yourself and your online presence a lot more responsibly. as opposed to just showing your non-compliant grow rooms, showing your 100 plants, hashtag don't care about the law, or things like that, where a lot of things, if you're cognizant, you're mindful of what you're doing and who might see that in the future, I think it definitely will do you a lot good in the future to make sure that you keep that safe. And the kind of the same thing that we said about safety and security for the medical facilities would go for caregiver grow, having any key codes or any confidential patient information on the walls. If you're taking a selfie and that's on there and your patient's card is shown, that's another violation of the MMMA. Patient information is supposed to be kept confidential, and so there's just little things that could cause you to slip up that, we're not saying it's going to be a violation every time and you're going to get ticketed or fined or arrested or charged with any kind of offense every single time, but you never know
why risk it?
What could happen and why risk it, exactly.
Right. And so besides caregivers and patients, and besides licensed businesses, Michigan is an adult use state now. So any adult over the age of 21 can now possess marijuana, which is great. And I'm sure that many people are posting pictures of their product and their plants on social media. But you also have to be careful that just because it's legal doesn't mean that you have free reign to post whatever you want, however you want. And one of the biggest things that we were talking about is the issue of like an Instagram giveaway. Gifting, giveaways, where you're saying that you're going to give away a certain amount of product, or you're going to, somebody can purchase a t-shirt from you and get something, a little gift of marijuana, and you're promoting this on social media. Again, we've talked about gifting before. Don't post it on social media, because now you're advertising that giveaway and the gifting, and that makes it invalid. You can only transfer up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana without remuneration, without money being received, to adults 21 and older, as long as the transfer is not advertised or promoted to the public. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any of that's all open to the public. So you're going to have a problem there. Just don't do it.
And the same goes for if you're trying to find a loophole by selling any other kind of product, and then happening to also include cannabis with it. The people who write these and the people who enforce these are aware of that type of situation happening. Not to pass judgment, but it does seem like those types of actors do spoil the bunch, so to speak. And the more you're trying to find a loophole and the more kind of nuanced questions you have to ask, the more people get word of the fact that you're really trying to do something with this loophole in mind. So when it says without remuneration, that really means without any kind of value received for you doing that. So it includes services potentially. The only true way to stay legal is to just give someone the weed that you have, who's over 21 years old. Advertising book sales, candy sales, other things, and then cannabis on the side, or even just saying, hey, I have a bunch of weed left over, who wants to come get it? Just DM me or go ahead and like the first 10 likes to get some free weed.
Right.
That potentially or is a violation of Section 5 of the Adult Use Act. Depending on how severe that is, there are civil infractions for violating those adult use rules. But if it's habitual, willful, for commercial gain, involves violence, you're still talking about potential misdemeanor charges. So again, better to be safe than sorry, and it's okay to give it away, to transfer it, but just don't advertise it to the public. Don't promote it.
Right.
Keep it between you and that person that you're transferring it to.
Right. And finally, be smart about it. You guys know what the law is. 2.5 ounces on your person, 10 ounces in your home. Don't be posting pictures of a ton of product all piled up on your kitchen table, and it's way more than what is allowed by law. Things like that are going to create big red flags. And we want to really avoid that. We want to make sure that you're talking about this in a legal and compliant manner. Even if it's legal for adult use, you can still run into issues and misdemeanor charges if you have photographic or video evidence showing that you might be breaking a portion of that law.
Mm-hmm. And another thing too, to go with adult use grows, you're allowed to grow 12 plants at your premises.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of go along with having too many. But also, let's say you are growing outdoors and it's not visible to the public from the front, but the plant's 20 feet tall and your fence is only 6 feet.
Right.
Someone might see that and go, oh yeah, we'll go give this guy a ticket because it's visible to the public, and thanks for posting it and sharing it to the local community Facebook page where law enforcement's looking or a building official would come by and give you a ticket. And so it's just kind of just in your best interest to be aware of some conduct that can be viewed, and the stuff that's out there on social media, following certain best practices in terms of how you're marketing or promoting either your cannabis business or your personal caregiver grows that you're trying to get a new job for, or just how you interact with other individuals based on your status is just important to keep in mind as you're going forward. And
just to wrap this up, I just wanted to talk briefly about licensed businesses under the new adult use law. So we actually don't have, at the time of recording, any licensed businesses under the adult use law in Michigan yet. That being said, there will be some, and we anticipate that the rules governing marketing and cannabis on social media are going to be very similar to what is currently listed in the MMFLA. So, you can't advertise to minors, but think about little tweaks, like instead of saying, must be Michigan patient over age of 18, it will say must be Michigan adult over age of 21. Something like that, where we're going to see like little tweaks, but it's probably going to be substantially similar to what's currently in place. I think that's everything that we meant to cover. If you guys have any questions at all, please make sure you comment, shoot us an email, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. We're on Twitter now, so we are on all of the social media. We face the same challenges that we talked about in this show as you guys probably will. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll look forward to talking with you next week. Bye.